Well, hi everybody, it's Patricia here, and just summarizing the last emotional audit live session for you, module 7, where we were looking at the bigger picture, really, of what trauma does, how it plays out in different parts of the body, how it transforms our connection to self and others, and how modern medicine has kind of missed the bigger picture, really, in its understanding of disease and chronic conditions in particular. It's been too focused, I guess, on the acute infectious disease model and not enough on the biopsychosocial aspects of why people get ill. And one of the first questions I asked people was looking at the body as a kind of material readout of the mind, knowing that the body tends to translate things that you think or feel into symptoms. Where in your body do you feel particular symptoms, and is there a significance that you now understand from that? And someone was saying neck and shoulders were very implicated for her, and I asked specifically, is it both sides or is it one side or another? And she was saying it was her left side more often. And I asked if there was a significant event that tended to happen more on that side that she would have to brace herself against, because that's often what happens in neck and shoulder pain. Because if you imagine our nervous system is geared to defense, that's what it's really designed to do. It's interpreting our environment. The sympathetic system in particular is your activation system, and that is all about bracing yourself, whether that's against someone or something, like an accident. If you're seeing something, a collision about to happen, or you're about to fall and you need to protect yourself. And often these actions that are needed to protect yourself are incomplete or unavailable at the time they were imprinted. So if this is an accident that you didn't see coming, it's a side impact or something, you were unable to brace yourself because you just turned and saw it and it was too late. There was nothing you could do. Or if it was a person who's threatening you and attacking you, or verbally or physically, and you're a child, for instance, you can't defend yourself. And so there's a sense of bracing, but there's no movement to follow that through. And that gets absorbed into the body as a form of memory, implicit memory, as we've learned. And now someone else had sciatic pain. Now, sciatic pains are very interesting. I shouldn't say it's not, it's interesting to me. It's awful to have. I have had it. It's one of those pains that will really decrease the kind of quality of your life if it's chronic. And tends to come from the fact that we have the sciatic nerve that runs through a muscle called the piriformis, which is a very tight, tiny muscle in the buttock. And the nerve gets pinched, we believe, by the tightness in the buttock muscles. And if you think about our pelvis and the fact that the pelvis is balanced both side to side and also back to front, there are two muscles that work on that: the piriformis at the back and the psoas with a P at the front. And psoas in particular holds a lot of emotion. And if you think about kind of holding stuff in, we talk about someone being, excuse the language, tight-assed. But if you think about it, it's because we clench, when we're afraid or when we're unhappy, or when we feel threatened in some way. And that clenching, again, can be absorbed by the body as a memory of threat. And so sciatic pain often comes from those situations which are totally out of your control. And just rebalancing the body can help a lot. Certainly massaging into the buttock. A tennis ball is really brilliant for that. But certainly looking at some of the emotions you might be bearing as well, because there is no physical condition that has a purely physical cause. I mean, there are very few, perhaps. There's always emotional components to any form of pain, because as I've shown you, the part of the brain that processes emotional pain also processes physical pain. Someone else talked about muscle weakness, that was their main symptom after exercise. And I was explaining that again is, although it's perhaps not in the same league as a memory, it is due to the low energy capacity of the body, which tends to stop the muscles relaxing. And the ATP recycling, ATP is your energy currency. It's the molecule that helps create energy in the body, energy for all your biological functions. ATP gets recycled to ADP with the loss of a phosphate, which goes into the electron transport chain, which creates energy for your cells. And then it recycles with an addition of the extra phosphate back into ATP. So ATP to ADP is the redox cycle, if you like, of the energy in your body. And for what happens for a lot of people is that the recycling does not occur because you've lost either the minerals or cofactors that you need for the recycling. We were talking about what can help with that: CoQ10, quercetin, B vitamins are very, very implicated, magnesium, which a lot of people are chronically deficient in, but also the threat response, which may have been absorbed in you from your childhood experiences, is also downplaying your recycling because your body is in a state of threat. And it doesn't feel that actually your muscle function is something that it needs to prioritize. It needs to prioritize your heart, your liver, your lungs, because the musculature is using a lot of energy, and that has to be taken. It has to be taken from somewhere to prioritize the essential organs of the body. And so often that's why I think chronic pain is often felt in the postural muscles, because they take a lot of energy, and when energy is in short supply, that can often be felt. And this lack of recycling is at the core of that. And how you reverse that is both through supplementation, maybe adding in light energy, infrared. Infrared is really amazing for that, and also dealing with emotional trauma as well, and helping to restore the natural healing mechanism of the body. So that's what we covered. I then asked the question of how's your experience been of interacting with, and I put it in quotes, the sickness system, because I was saying that the health system actually isn't so much a health system. It's really about picking you up when you've come into ill health, when you've come into disease. There are a few interventions that happen to maintain health. I know I've had a few. I suppose dental checkups would come into that, having your cholesterol measured, although there's a slight issue there with how easily that is translated into putting you onto various medications, because they keep lowering the bar as to what it constitutes someone at risk. So there is a political implication there, but there are some areas in which the health service does kind of check on people and does, you could say mammograms for women, prostate checkups for men, it would count for health, but largely they're focused on what to do if there's something wrong, and not how to promote health before disease occurs, which would be a true preventative health system, and we don't have that. So I was asking people what was their experience, and one person said that that the experience of understanding of ME hadn't changed in 10 years, which was really sad, even though she had a new GP who should have known more, because they'd more recently trained, still didn't really understand what caused it, why it came back. Somebody else was saying, long COVID had not been really explained to them, although things were getting better and translating into perhaps more understanding that this was a nervous system dysregulation, which is the latest buzzword in medicine at the moment. But at least that is a step forward, as opposed to ME, which has always been considered a problem of either it's psychosomatic or it's a form of deconditioning. You do less and therefore your muscles can't pick up. And in fact, psychotherapy is often, or CBT has been suggested as a treatment for the first instance, and for the second it's something like graded exercise therapy via a physiotherapist, whatever, which if you're struggling to walk or to stand up and do the dishes, you're very unlikely to want to go on a treadmill. So we do have a system that's fragmented, that doesn't have an overarching understanding. But the good news is that long COVID has really shone the spotlight on some of these chronic conditions and what causes them. And we are now seeing that stress is recognized as a big component. And perhaps that is beginning to shift the landscape somewhat. There are papers out there that are being written currently on long COVID. It has really gained a huge amount of interest and research dollars. So we also talked about certain approaches being ridiculed, supplementation, for instance. I come from a training where I was told the body doesn't need supplementation. Our bodies are designed to work with food alone. That would be true. It's absolutely true, except our food is denuded. Our food is grown as an industrial product now with huge amounts of chemicals to make it grow in imbalanced soils, which are not manured. They're not fed. They're fed chemical cocktails rather than a natural recycling of organic materials. So if our food is denuded, then supplementation is absolutely necessary, unfortunately. And we also have exposure to huge amounts of chemicals, which I was talking about, that we absorb through the skin. We also absorb it through breathing and obviously ingestion. So it's just to be aware that whatever you put on your skin, for instance, you should never put anything on your skin that you wouldn't put in your mouth. It's a very good rule of thumb. That came up actually because I was talking about magnesium spray and that magnesium is absorbed through the skin. It's one of the things that can be. Iodine is the same, by the way. You can put drops of iodine. Here's a little test for you, all right? If you get an iodine solution, 5% iodine solution, something like Lugol's, Lugol, and you put a little square on your skin, and it stains your skin a very sort of browny or yellowy color. Say you make a 5 by 5 centimeter square patch. All right, don't worry, it disappears. It should be absorbed into the skin after 24 hours. If it's disappeared in any less time than 24 hours, you're iodine deficient. Okay, so it's just a really good measure of how deficient you are, that the skin will just suck it in because it needs it. So it's a really good little diagnostic tool for you without any blood tests or anything. It's just to try the iodine test. And with 5% iodine, it's actually okay to put on the tongue as well. And they say 5 to 10 drops a day. But check that in case I'm wrong. But 5% iodine we're talking here, not pure iodine or stronger. And iodine has huge implications for helping combat cancer. And cancer came up in our conversation later as well. So we were talking about, supplementation. We were also talking about how homeopathy has been ridiculed, denied. You're told you're basically being convinced by charlatans if they tell you it works, but or it's all entirely placebo. Just because you believe it works, it works. And I was saying, well, that on 2 counts that can't be true, because it works with animals, and also I feel that the imprint in water is what probably makes it work, and the water is not just H2O. The way the molecules are arranged is actually a sort of lattice. It's a 4th phase in biologically active systems. So it's not like the water that comes out the tap. In biological systems, it's structured as a sort of crystalline layer, and it holds information. Crystalline layers hold information, hence silicon chips. This is all in my book, by the way, Life Illuminated, various books I've written about, even I think it's in The Scarlet Won't Heal as well, all about living water, which is very different, and it holds energy and information. And so homeopathy would make sense from that point of view, because now it's holding an energy imprint, not just molecular imprint. And so we think probably modern medicine fails to understand that, because it isn't trained in biophysics, it's only trained in biochemistry. I know, because I studied biochemistry with medics. We shared the first year. So the guy that did some work on water, by the way, was Masaru Emoto, and I'm going to leave the link in the description, or I may just leave it on the Facebook group. It depends if I make this video general or I make it hidden. I haven't decided yet. Okay, so so there have been a sense of shift because of long COVID and the understanding that that has brought. But by and large, the healthcare setting is one of kind of doing their best, but they really don't have a model to explain, as I said. And that really comes to the fore with the subject of cancer, which is such an emotive subject and one that I don't normally broach on YouTube, because you have to be very, very careful what you say about cancer, because it's generally regarded as something that happens randomly due to bad genes. I think that's wrong. I think it's a metabolic condition, and it comes about through trauma is one of the major reasons. Unresolved emotion, huge driver of that, because if you think that it's a dysregulation of your immune system, all right, and we know that the immune system is incredibly sensitive to the nervous and hormonal systems around it. So it's everything works with everything else. If you are in total isolation, if you are angry, if you are still holding on to sorrow that you haven't been able to release, cancer is just one of the many outcomes that can happen. It's also linked to toxicity. If your liver's not detoxing properly, your toxicity builds up in the system. It can also build up in the gut, in the bladder, you know, wherever cancer is present is usually a site of toxicity. So it's a very big, complex subject, not one I want to go into in detail here. And as I say, I have to be careful, because there is a view that you can only cure it through chemotherapy, surgery, and radiotherapy. But there are other ways, of course, that you can help yourself at the very least. So someone else was talking about that. Cancer came up because of the final question I had to ask people was, how does an understanding of care and compassion kind of change your outlook? And one lady was saying that somebody that she knows has had a diagnosis of cancer, and how they've noticed he's not been looking after himself, and he's been living in a very difficult, isolated, and barely functional state, you know, where the place he's living doesn't have hot water, and it's very, you know, chaotic. And you know, looking after your environment and seeking help if you can't do it, you know, reaching out for help is so key to healing. It is so key. And it was the one area I think I really struggled with when I was going through my breakdown, transformation, whatever you want to call it, because I truly believe that only I could sort this, and that I didn't need anyone else, because that's how I'd kind of been raised, to think I'm self-sufficient, and that's okay. Well, we do have willpower, but willpower doesn't touch pain. All right, good luck with that. You cannot cure yourself through emotional pain by willpower. You cannot convince yourself to feel better. You have to have emotional connection, a safe emotional connection with another person, in order to help yourself release what hasn't been released. And so sharing knowledge with other people is one aspect, I think, of making a community, but also sharing wisdom. And wisdom is knowledge applied, all right, including the mistakes you've made, including the things that haven't worked. And I haven't shared this with you generally, but you know, I've been trying to advertise on YouTube, and it's been very, very interesting. I've had so many people booking calls and then just not turning up, not coming for their free call, which I offer for absolutely no obligation. There's no big sales pitch button, you know, 3/4 of people book the call, answer some of the questions that I asked them in preparation for the call, and then don't turn up. And I'm still absolutely boggled by that. So I need to look at other ways perhaps to make this information better known. And you all came up with some wonderful ideas for how I could do that, including a companion guide to the course, which, yeah, that definitely could be done. Don't forget, all the materials are downloadable except for the videos because they are on YouTube. And I reserve the right to make those non-downloadable, because obviously what I want to do with those is keep them distinct to the course and non-shareable, basically, because they are my copyright content. But there is maybe the idea that I could put them together in a paid for course that you would be able to keep long term. So I'll be thinking about that. I do have a Thinkific site, which again I will reference under here, and maybe we'll see each other on the Facebook group, and if not, I'll also be thinking about how I can do the occasional reunion. Don't forget, I also do a community session every month, which is open to all. It's not just people who've been through the emotional audit, it's anyone who wants to be in a group environment in which they're safe and held and understood. And there's a bit of teaching in that as well. I do 10-15 minutes of slides at the beginning on different subjects. At the moment, we're talking about self-esteem. That's available on my website. It's £10 a session. It's a drop-in. You come whenever you want. You have no obligation whatsoever. But whenever you want to drop in, you can. So anyway, it's been a joy working with you all, and thank you so much for taking part and for being honest and open and for coming along this journey with me. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.